It all began on an ordinary Tuesday, but it was anything but ordinary. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the small neighborhood of Maplewood. As the narrator sipped coffee on the porch, an unexpected commotion shattered the tranquility. The sound of laughter and the rhythmic thud of a soccer ball echoed from the neighbor's yard, pulling them from their thoughts. "No way. Did that just happen?" the narrator mused, eyes wide open in disbelief. The Parker kids, Timmy and Jenna, had a mischievous streak that was well known to the residents. They were charming, with their contagious laughter that could brighten even the gloomiest of days. Their innocent games often spilled over into the narrator's yard, transforming the tranquil space into a battlefield of laughter and competitive cheer. But on this day, everything felt different, as if the air thickened with anticipation. Suddenly, the ball soared over the fence with a powerful kick, landing near the narrator's feet. The children paused, their eyes wide in surprise, waiting for a reaction. "Uh-oh," Timmy whispered to Jenna, his face pale as if he had just dropped a priceless family heirloom. The narrator chuckled, bending down to retrieve the ball. "You guys are getting better. Just watch out for my garden, all right?" But instead of laughing it off, the children exchanged nervous glances. An invisible line had been crossed, a forbidden area invaded. "Sorry, we just wanted to play," Jenna called out hesitantly, her voice barely a whisper above the sudden silence that enveloped them. The narrator felt a pang of nostalgia, the kind that tugged at warm memories of their own childhood adventures. As they bounced the ball back over the fence, a strange sensation washed over them. They had always cherished the neighborhood's tight-knit community, where everyone shared laughter, barbecues, and even the occasional gossip. But the incidents of late had cast a shadow over that warmth. Whispers of discontent had begun to circulate, like autumn leaves tossed by a chill wind. What was happening to their idyllic neighborhood? Days turned into weeks, and the soccer games continued. Yet, unbeknownst to the narrator, this light-hearted facade was about to crack. One fateful evening, as dusk settled in like a thick blanket, the narrator noticed something peculiar. The Parker parents, Sarah and Mark, stood by their porch, engaged in a heated discussion. Their faces were flushed, eyes darting toward the children, who were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond their laughter. Creeping closer, the narrator strained to catch snippets of the argument. "They can't just cross the line like that, Mark. It's not just about the ball," Sarah exclaimed, her voice laced with frustration. The gravity of her words hung in the air, igniting a flicker of concern within the narrator. What did she mean? Was it merely about a soccer ball, or did it signify something deeper? With every passing day, the tension escalated within the neighborhood. Neighbors began avoiding each other. Whispers of grievances floated like sparks in an increasingly heavy atmosphere. The narrator found themselves caught between their fondness for the Parker children and the growing unease among the adults. Curiosity gnawed at them. What secrets lay beneath the surface? One sunny afternoon, curiosity took charge, leading the narrator to venture into the Parkers' yard. They stumbled upon Jenna practicing her soccer kicks, her short hair bouncing with each energetic motion. "Hey Jenna, mind if I join?" The invitation came as a surprise, and her eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Really? That would be awesome!" she exclaimed, sprinting towards the makeshift goals set up in their backyard. But just as they began to kick the ball back and forth, a shadow loomed. "Not now, Jenna," Mark's voice boomed from the porch, authoritative and firm. The joy melted from her face, replaced by confusion and disappointment. "But Dad, I was just having fun," she protested, her eyes darting back to the narrator, searching for support. The narrator watched, heart pounding, feeling the weight of the moment. "It's just a game," they interjected, desperately trying to lighten the mood. "We're just having fun." But Mark's gaze was unwavering as he stepped down from the porch. "There's more at stake here than just fun. There are rules to follow. Some things can't be ignored, you know?" The tension hung thick in the air, suffocating the laughter that usually filled the space. The narrator felt a knot tightening in their stomach. There was something deeper going on, beyond just a simple game of soccer. The disconnect between the playful children and their worried parents had grown into an undeniable rift. As the evening closed in, the narrator retreated back to their porch, contemplating the scenes they had just witnessed. Was this innocent neighborhood turning into a battlefield of secrets and misunderstandings? What were they missing? Before the sun dipped below the horizon, the narrator decided to reach out to Sarah. Perhaps, they thought, a conversation could reveal the hidden truth lurking in the shadows of Maplewood. They needed to know what was really going on in their neighborhood, and how could they help restore the laughter echoing through the streets. With uneasiness mingling with determination, the narrator took a deep breath, resolved to uncover the secrets that seemed to threaten the very fabric of their community. Stay tuned, they thought, as they prepared to unravel the complexities that lay ahead. And as they wrapped up their day, a lingering question echoed in their mind. Was this just the beginning of a deeper unraveling, or could it lead to a resolution that healed the rifts between neighbors? Subscribe to follow this shocking tale, and what do you think is really happening in Maplewood? Share your thoughts in the comments below. It was a restless afternoon, shadows stretching long across the grass as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The narrator, still reeling from the parents' argument, felt an urgency to unravel the mystery that was tightening its grip on the neighborhood. The laughter of the Parker kids echoed through the air, but this time it felt tainted, like a sweet melody veiled in sorrow. Determined to understand the rift between the families, the narrator decided to confront the Parkers. I need to know what's really going on, they thought, steeling themselves for what might be an uncomfortable conversation. The tension of the earlier argument hung in the air like an ominous cloud. As they approached the Parker home, the faint sounds of a soccer ball being kicked were interrupted by the bickering of adults, which was still audible even from the sidewalk. The narrator hesitated, heart pounding in anticipation. Just then, Jenna ran out, her face flushed with excitement. "Hey, want to play? Please?" Caught off guard, the narrator smiled, the innocence of her request softening their resolve. "Sure, just for a bit," they replied, thinking perhaps this would be a good way to ease into the conversation with her parents. The game began, Timmy joining in with his boundless energy. But soon, Jenna's laughter turned to a worried frown as she glanced toward the porch. "Dad's still mad," she whispered, kicking the ball half-heartedly. The narrator felt a pang of empathy. Just then, Mark stepped off the porch, arms crossed, his brow furrowed. "Jenna, I told you not to play here. We have to talk." The firmness in his voice sliced through the air like a knife. The narrator felt an overwhelming urge to intervene, sensing that the children were caught in the crossfire. "Actually, Mark," the narrator said, stepping forward, "I'd like to understand what's happening. It seems there's something more than just a soccer ball at play here." Mark's eyes narrowed, assessing the narrator before he sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Fine. It's not just about them playing in the yard. It's about respect and boundaries. You see, Sarah thinks it's okay for the kids to run wild, but I believe they need to learn the importance of private space." "Private space?" the narrator echoed, trying to grasp the weight of his words. "But they're just kids, Mark. Isn't playing together what community is all about?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Mark's face. "Community is one thing, but allowing chaos to spill into our lives is another. Sarah doesn't understand that. She thinks I'm the bad guy for wanting some peace." The narrator felt a wave of sympathy for both Mark and Sarah, realizing that this conflict ran deeper than just the children's games. "Have you two talked about it?" they asked, hoping to bridge the growing divide. "Talked? More like screamed," came the defeated reply. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, frustration evident. "We can't seem to agree on anything these days. It's driving a wedge between us, and I don't know how to fix it." Before the conversation could spiral further, Sarah's voice rang out from the porch. "Mark, come back here!" Her tone was demanding, and the narrator could see the tension in her posture. It appeared the storm was far from over. "Let's just finish this later," Mark said, retreating towards Sarah, who had stormed down the steps, arms flailing as she spoke. The narrator found themselves standing on the edge of a domestic battlefield. Concerned for the children, they called out, "Hey, Jenna, Timmy, how about a little break?" The kids looked at each other, then back at the narrator, confusion mixed with a hint of relief. "Can we?" Jenna asked hopefully. "Absolutely." The narrator led them away from the brewing conflict to the quiet sanctuary of their own porch. As they settled down, the kids began to relax, the earlier tension dissipating. But the narrator's mind was racing, piecing together the fragments of a conflict that seemed to span far beyond simple games. "Why do you think your parents are fighting?" the narrator asked, testing the waters gently. Jenna bit her lip, glancing at Timmy, who shrugged. I think it's because Dad doesn't want us to play in the yard. But it's not fair. We just want to have fun. Timmy chimed in. Yeah, it's our favorite spot. The narrator nodded, considering their words carefully. It was clear that the kids felt trapped in a tug-of-war between their parents. Have you talked to them about it? The narrator pressed, hoping to inspire some form of communication. Maybe they don't realize how you feel. Jenna looked thoughtful, her brow furrowing. I don't think Dad cares what we think. He just wants things his way. A sense of dread crept into the narrator's heart. What if they fight so much that they forget about you two? The thought sent chills down their spine, realizing the implications of such a rift. As the afternoon wore on, the narrator took it upon themselves to be the bridge between the children and their parents, determined to mend the fractures they had uncovered. They felt a surge of responsibility. This was not merely about soccer balls and yards, it was about the very fabric of their community. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over Maplewood, but the narrator felt a chill. They had stumbled into a family crisis that could tear apart not just the Parkers, but the neighborhood itself. Let's go talk to your parents, the narrator suggested, rising from their seat, a sense of impending confrontation coursing through them. Jenna and Timmy exchanged glances, uncertainty written across their faces. What if they yell? Timmy asked, anxiety creeping into his tone. We'll make them listen. It's time for everyone to understand what's really at stake, the narrator replied, their heart racing. They were determined to face the storm, ready to confront the adults and bring clarity to the chaos. As they approached the porch, the tension was palpable. The narrator could feel the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the air. This might not end well, they thought, steeling themselves for the confrontation that awaited. What are you going to say? Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Just trust me, the narrator replied, knowing that the future of their community and the lives of the Parker children depended on this moment. With a deep breath, they stepped onto the porch, ready to face the storm head-on. Would they be able to mend the rift, or would the conflict spiral further into chaos? Only time would tell. As the narrator prepared to speak, they couldn't shake the lingering question. Is this really about a soccer ball, or is something deeper lurking beneath the surface? As they settled on the porch, the narrator glanced at Jenna and Timmy, who were now engaged in a spirited conversation about their favorite soccer players. Yet the laughter felt strained, a thin veil over the unease that had gripped the neighborhood. The narrator knew they had to dig deeper. What really happened the last time you played? They asked, trying to sound casual, but the gravity of the question hung in the air like a dense fog. Jenna's smile faltered, and she exchanged a worried glance with Timmy. We were playing by the big tree, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. And then there was a loud crash. Timmy piped in, his eyes wide. Yeah, a car. It came out of nowhere. The words tumbled out in a rush, each syllable infused with a mix of fear and boyish excitement. The narrator leaned in, hanging on every word. What do you mean? What happened? It hit the fence, Jenna continued, her brow furrowed in concentration. We were all scared, and then Dad came running and Mom was crying. It was really loud. The narrator's heart raced. A car crash? That was no ordinary incident. And after that, they prompted gently, sensing the children needed a safe space to share their fears. Timmy shuffled his feet, his face clouded with concern. Dad said we could have gotten hurt. He said it was dangerous to play near the street. Now he's always worried something bad will happen. The weight of their words settled heavily on the narrator. The accident had clearly left a mark, not just on the children, but on the parents as well. So that's why your dad is upset about the games, they murmured, piecing together the puzzle. He's just trying to keep you safe. Yeah, Jenna said, her voice barely a whisper, but it feels like he doesn't want us to have fun anymore. Before the narrator could respond, the sound of raised voices from the Parker home cut through the moment like a knife. The argument had escalated again, a cacophony of frustration spilling into the quiet afternoon. The narrator exchanged a worried glance with the kids, who seemed to shrink back at the sound. Let's go see what's happening, the narrator suggested, trying to keep their voice steady despite the knot forming in their stomach. The children nodded hesitantly, and together they made their way back towards the chaotic scene. As they approached, Sarah's voice was now sharper than ever, punctuated by the sound of a door slamming.
You never listen, Mark. You think you're the only one who cares. I'm just trying to protect them, Mark shot back, his voice tinged with desperation. The narrator felt a surge of determination. They couldn't let the children witness this spiraling conflict without stepping in. Mark, Sarah, they called out, hoping to break the cycle of anger. The couple turned, surprise flashing across their faces. What? Mark snapped, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. I think we need to talk, the narrator said, their heart racing. This is affecting the kids more than you realize. The tension in the air shifted slightly, the heat of the argument cooling as Mark's expression shifted from annoyance to contemplation. Sarah crossed her arms, her brow furrowing. What do you mean? They're just kids. They're scared, the narrator replied, their voice steady but gentle.
They've been through something traumatic, and this conflict between you two is only making it worse. Mark's shoulder sagged at the words, the fight draining from him. Sarah's expression softened, the anger waning as realization hit. I didn't think, she started, her voice trailing off. None of us did, the narrator interjected. But if you want to keep your kids safe, you both need to find a way to work together. Silence fell between them, the weight of the narrator's words hanging heavily in the air. Jenna and Timmy stood just behind, their small faces painted with worry. Maybe we can talk about some rules, Jenna suggested, her voice a brave attempt to mend the rift. Like where we can play or what times are okay. Timmy nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, we can even use the backyard. Mark and Sarah exchanged a glance, the tension beginning to dissipate. Maybe you're right, Mark finally said, his voice softer now. I've been too focused on the danger and not enough on how to keep things fun for you. Sarah nodded, her expression softening further. And I've been too stubborn, thinking I know what's best. I just don't want anything to happen to you two. The narrator felt a surge of relief wash over them. Perhaps this was the breakthrough they needed. How about we sit down together? We can figure this out as a team, they suggested, sensing the fragile reconciliation unfolding before them. The children's eyes lit up, hope sparking in their chests.
Can we play after? Timmy asked eagerly, bouncing on his heels. Of course, Sarah said, her voice full of warmth. Once we talk about it, we'll make it work. As the families began to gather on the porch, the narrator felt a sense of accomplishment. The friction that had been tearing them apart was slowly beginning to dissolve. But deep down, they knew this was just the beginning. There were still layers of misunderstandings and fears waiting to be unraveled. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the narrator couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the Parkers. But the question lingered in their mind. Could this newfound understanding last, or will old fears resurface to reignite the conflict? With a newfound determination, the narrator resolved to stay involved, to mediate and support both families in this delicate time. After all, the children's laughter depended on it. Before leaving, the narrator turned to the camera, a knowing glint in their eye. So, what do you think? Can the Parkers find a way to work things out? Or will the tension return? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter of this neighborhood saga. The sun began to set, casting long shadows that danced across the pavement as the tension in the air thickened. Unable to shake the feeling that something needed to change, the narrator resolved to take action. We need a neighborhood meeting, they declared to the children, who stared back wide-eyed, their innocence hanging in the balance. Let's invite everyone. Maybe then we can clear the air. Timmy's eyes widened in excitement, while Jenna looked apprehensive. What if they don't want to listen? She asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. The narrator knelt down, meeting her gaze. Sometimes all it takes is a conversation to make things better. I'll make sure everyone knows it's a safe space to share. The children nodded, their fears softening into a flicker of hope. The next day, flyers were hastily crafted, colorful papers adorned with the words, "Neighborhood Meeting, Let's Talk." The narrator distributed them, knocking on doors and engaging with neighbors who had begun to feel the strain of the escalating frustrations. Mrs. Thompson, who lived 2 doors down, expressed her worries about the children playing in the street. I've seen them darting around like little ducks in a pond. It's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt, she lamented, her voice trembling.
As the meeting day approached, murmurs spread throughout Maplewood. Some neighbors were eager to attend, while others scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as unnecessary. The narrator sensed that this would be a turning point, not just for the Parkers, but for the entire community. Finally, the evening of the meeting arrived. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow that bathed the front yards in a golden hue. The narrator set up folding chairs in the park across from the Parkers' house, nervous energy bubbling within them as they arranged snacks and drinks. They hoped for a good turnout, but as they glanced around, only a handful of neighbors trickled in. Mark and Sarah Parker were among them, their faces still marked by the remnants of their earlier argument. "Thanks for coming," the narrator greeted, forcing a smile despite the knot in their stomach. "I think we can all agree that we've been feeling some tension lately, especially concerning the kids." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, followed by a few uncomfortable glances exchanged between parents. Mark cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "I just want everyone to understand that I'm not trying to be a villain. I just want to keep my kids safe." His voice was strained, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as the others. Sarah chimed in. "And we all care about our kids. It's not just about the Parkers. We all want them to play, but we also need to be responsible." The narrator nodded, grateful for the willingness to engage, but they could feel the tension rising again. "What if we establish some guidelines? What are some concerns we can address together?" The question hung in the air, inviting responses, but the room felt charged, emotions swirling. Mrs. Thompson raised her hand tentatively.
"I worry about the kids running into the street. We've had some close calls with cars coming too fast." A few heads nodded in agreement, but the concern quickly spiraled into accusations. "Well, if they weren't playing so close to the road, it wouldn't be a problem," another neighbor shouted. That's when the meeting began to unravel. Voices rose, frustration spilled over, and the initial intention of coming together crumbled. "You're too strict, Mark. You think you know what's best for everyone," someone yelled. Mark's face flushed red, and Sarah shot him a sharp look. "And you think just letting them run around will solve everything. You're not thinking of their safety." The narrator could feel the weight of the conflict, a thick cloud of unresolved issues threatening to suffocate their efforts. "Everyone, please," they called out, their voice rising above the chaos. "Let's remember why we're here. We need to find common ground, not wage war on each other. This isn't just about the Parkers, it's about all of us." Silence fell as the crowd breathed in the narrator's plea for unity. Slowly, the energy shifted, and they sensed a desire to mend the rift. Jenna, who had been silent thus far, stood up, her small frame trembling, but her voice steady. "I just want to play without being scared. We don't want to get hurt, but we also want to have fun together. Can't we find a way to do both?" Her words struck a chord, resonating deep within the group. The room quieted, and the adults shifted uncomfortably, the weight of their own fears now laid bare. Mark's expression softened, and he glanced at Sarah, who nodded in understanding. "Maybe we need to set specific times for play where we can ensure everyone is being safe," he suggested, his voice calmer. A flicker of hope illuminated the gathering. The conversation began to flow again, this time infused with a willingness to listen and compromise. They discussed a neighborhood schedule, designated play areas, and even a potential block party to foster connections among families. The narrative shifted from fear to collaboration, and the air buzzed with newfound energy. As the meeting wrapped up, the neighbors started to disperse, their faces showing signs of relief. Children giggled as they played in the background, their laughter now echoing with an unburdened joy. The narrator felt a warmth spread through them, knowing they had ignited a spark of hope in Maplewood. But lurking beneath the surface, unresolved tension still simmered, and the narrator sensed that this was merely a temporary calm. As they watched the Parkers exchange glances, a new worry crept in. What would happen when the next disagreement arose? The future of the neighborhood hung delicately in the balance, and the narrator knew their work was far from over. "What do you think will happen next?" they pondered aloud.
Can this fragile truce hold,
Or will the shadows of past grievances return to haunt Maplewood? As they packed up the last of the folding chairs, the narrator couldn't shake the feeling that the real story was just beginning. "Don't forget to subscribe for more updates on Maplewood's unfolding drama," they called out, knowing that the next chapter was bound to be even more unpredictable. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. The chaos was palpable, voices clashing like thunder as neighbors hurled accusations back and forth. The narrator felt the tension thickening the air around them, a suffocating weight that seemed to press down on everyone present. "Everyone, please!" they shouted again, desperation seeping into their tone. "This is exactly why we're here, to talk, not to fight." But the noise escalated, drowning out their plea. Mark's face was a mixture of anger and hurt, while Sarah stood by him, her arms crossed defensively. "Why does everyone always make us the bad guys?" Mark shouted, his voice cracking. "We are just trying to protect our kids." From the crowd, a voice piped up, "But your protection feels like a prison." It was a neighbor the narrator didn't recognize, someone who had kept their distance until now. The comment hung in the air, heavy and accusatory, and it created a ripple of murmurs. The narrator's heart sank as they realized that the meeting was spiraling further away from resolution. "Can we just take a step back?" the narrator urged, their voice trembling, but the stakes were rising, and with it, the divisions along the crowd. "This isn't just about the kids playing, it's about us, too. I can't help but notice that there's more going on beneath the surface." A silence fell, some neighbors exchanging cautious glances. It was an opening, a crack in the wall of animosity. "Like what?" someone asked, crossing their arms, their skepticism palpable. "Like the time Mrs. Thompson parked too close to the curb and the Parkers complained about it," the narrator said, their heart racing as they recalled the whispered conversations that had floated through the neighborhood like smoke. "Or when Mr. Jenkins had that loud party last summer and the Parkers called the cops." The memories were like pieces of a puzzle falling into place, illuminating the underlying tensions and grievances that had festered over time. Mrs. Thompson's face flushed, and she opened her mouth to argue, but hesitated. Mark looked taken aback. "You didn't have to mention that," he muttered, his voice low, but the cracks in his armor were starting to show. "Maybe we do," the narrator pressed, the adrenaline pushing them forward. "These past grievances are weighing us down. We can't move forward if we don't address what's created this divide." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and the narrator felt a glimmer of hope. "Let's be honest about how we feel and what we want."
We all care about our kids, but we also care about each other, don't we? The words hung in the air, a challenge and an invitation all at once. Mark took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging slightly. He started, but Sarah placed a hand on his arm, steadying him. "We do want the best for our kids, but I always feel like we're being attacked. It's hard to hear everyone's complaints when we're just trying to do what we think is right." Jenna, who had been silently watching, piped up, her innocence shining through the darkness. "But if we all just talk, maybe we can all agree on something, like where we can play." It was an unexpected voice of reason that shifted the energy in the room. The laughter of children playing nearby loomed as a reminder of why everyone was gathered. "Yes," the narrator said eagerly, "exactly. Let's make rules everyone can follow. But first, let's all share what we've been holding inside." Before the words could settle, a burst of conversation erupted. Some neighbors expressed their fears about safety. Others shared grievances of being judged or misunderstood. The room transformed from a battleground into a space of vulnerability, and the emotions that had previously been bottled up began to flow freely. "Last winter, we had a snowball fight that got out of hand," Mr. Jenkins admitted sheepishly, chuckling at the memory. "I thought the Parkers would never let their kids play with us again." "Or when my dog barked at your kids and I freaked out," Mrs. Thompson added, her voice lightening. "I was just worried and I should have talked to you about it." Laughter bubbled up, easing the tension, and the narrator felt a sense of relief wash over them. They knew it wasn't over, but this was a step forward. They realized the importance of acknowledging not just the current issue of the children playing in the street, but the history of small grievances that had poisoned their relationships. As the night wore on, a tentative camaraderie began to form. Together, they discussed boundaries for the kids' play, agreeing to designate a play area that felt safe yet inviting. They drafted a set of simple guidelines that would ensure everyone felt heard and considered. When the meeting drew to a close, the narrator looked around at the group, their hearts lighter. "Thank you all for being brave enough to share your truths tonight. We can do this if we continue to talk and listen." As neighbors began to disperse, Mark approached the narrator. "I know we came off as overprotective," he admitted, a hint of remorse in his eyes. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on everyone else. I'm sorry." The narrator smiled, the weight of the night beginning to lift. "Let's keep this going. We can't just have one meeting and think everything will be perfect. We need to keep the lines of communication open." "Agreed," Mark said, nodding.
Let's make Maplewood a place where we can all feel safe and heard. As the last neighbor left, the narrator took a deep breath, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. They were aware that they had only scratched the surface of the deeper issues within Maplewood, yet they couldn't shake off the feeling that tonight marked the beginning of something new, an opportunity for real change. But just as they began to pack up chairs, a shadow loomed over them. A figure stood at the edge of the park, cloaked in darkness. "Did you really think this was over?" a voice called out, sending a shiver down the narrator's spine. They turned, heart racing. The unresolved tension crackled back to life, and suddenly, everything felt uncertain once more. "What do you mean?" the narrator called out, their voice steadier than they felt. The figure stepped into the light, a neighbor they recognized, but their expression was unreadable. "You've opened a can of worms, and trust me, you're going to wish you hadn't." As the words hung ominously in the air, the narrator realized that the storm they thought they had weathered was only just beginning. They had uncovered the fractures in their community, but what lay beneath was far more complicated than they could have ever imagined. Stay tuned, they thought, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. The real battle for Maplewood had yet to unfold.
And with that, they understood one thing clearly. They needed to prepare for what was coming next. Before they left, they turned to the camera, a sense of urgency in their eyes. If you want to know what happens next in Maplewood, don't forget to subscribe. I want to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you were caught in the middle of this? Comment below. As they walked home, the darkness around them felt heavier than before. The unspoken tensions lingered, and the narrator knew that the journey was far from over. The chaos subsided for a brief moment, allowing the air to crackle with anticipation. The narrator realized that this was the moment to seize the crowd's fragile attention. With a steady breath, they stepped forward, their voice cutting through the lingering tension. "What if I told you that one of our neighbors has been hiding something that directly threatens our children's safety?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eyes widened as the weight of the insinuation hung in the air like a storm cloud. Mark's frown deepened, and Sarah's grip on his arm tightened. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling, a mix of fear and curiosity. The narrator glanced around, gauging the room's mood. "I've been hearing whispers, things that don't add up. Why have we been so divided? Because there's a secret lurking beneath the surface, one that connects all of us." "What secret?" a voice from the back shouted, demanding clarity. "Remember the old Smith house at the end of the block?" The narrator continued, their heart racing as they spoke. "It's been vacant for months, but I've seen strange things happening there. Cars pulling up late at night, lights flickering like a warning sign. And then there's that rumor about why the Smiths left so suddenly." Curiosity transformed the crowd's anger into intrigue. "What about it?" Jenna's innocent voice cut through the murmurs, bringing attention back to the children. "Is it about the kids?" "Yes, Jenna," the narrator replied, their tone softening. "You see, it's rumored that the Smiths were involved in unsafe activities that could put all our kids at risk. No one wanted to talk about it, but if those kids are playing near that house, they could be in danger." "Danger? What kind of danger?" Mark questioned, his voice now an uneasy whisper. "Neglect, possibly even illegal activities that could expose our children to harm," the narrator pressed on, feeling the weight of their words sink in. "If we don't confront this now, we're failing to protect our kids. If we don't act, we're allowing fear to dictate our lives instead of unity." The crowd stirred, the whispers growing louder, questions spiraling like leaves caught in a gust of wind. "What do we do?" someone asked, their voice shaking. "How do we confront this?" The narrator felt the collective pulse of anxiety and determination push them to speak. "We need to rally together."
This isn't just about the games in the yard anymore. It's about our community. We have to approach the Smith house not as adversaries, but as concerned neighbors. We deserve answers. "Are you crazy?" Mark interjected, his anger flaring again. "You think it's smart to confront whoever is in there?" "Better than ignoring it and letting our kids play near a potential hazard," the narrator countered, their resolve hardening. "The longer we let this secret fester, the more perilous it becomes. We owe it to our kids to check it out, to ensure their safety." An uneasy silence washed over the assembly as they processed the gravity of the situation. Sarah finally released her hold on Mark's arm, her voice steadying. "What if we approach calmly? If there's nothing wrong, we'll have peace of mind. But if there is, we need to know." The crowd nodded in agreement, a sense of purpose igniting within them. Slowly, the anger had transformed into a unified front, driven by the desire to protect their children. The narrator felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this was the turning point they had long awaited. "Let's do it tomorrow," Jenna proposed, her eyes shining with determination. "We can go together, all of us, and see what's going on. If we knock on the door, we can talk to whoever is there." "Right," the narrator agreed, their hearts swelling at Jenna's bravery. "We can divide into small groups, approach it from different angles. We'll be non-confrontational, but we'll make sure our concerns are heard. Together." Mark sighed, his defenses wavering. "Okay, I'll help organize it. But if things go south, we need to have a backup plan." "Agreed," the narrator said. "But let's focus on the goal, to ensure our children's safety." As the crowd began to disperse, the energy shifted from resentment to resolve. The narrator felt the weight of the gathering lift, the shared understanding creating a bond that had been absent before. But lurking beneath the surface was a lingering dread. They couldn't shake the feeling that the confrontation with the Smiths might uncover more than just secrets about their activities. It could expose the vulnerabilities of their tight-knit community. Later that evening, as darkness cloaked Maplewood, the narrator sat on their porch, the stars twinkling overhead like distant promises. They felt a sense of urgency tightening in their chest. Tomorrow's confrontation wasn't just about the Smiths. It was a defining moment for the entire neighborhood. They wondered what truths would emerge, what hidden fears might be brought to light. Just then, a movement caught their eye. From the corner of their porch, they spotted a shadow darting from the direction of the old Smith house. The figure paused, casting a wary glance around before slipping into the shadows. The narrator's heart raced. What was that? Suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. Could it be one of the Smiths?
They muttered under their breath. Or someone else entirely? An uneasy feeling settled in their stomach. The narrator knew they had to confront the situation head-on. They couldn't let fear dictate their actions any longer. With a heavy sigh, they resolved to gather the neighbors again, to ensure everyone was prepared for whatever awaited them the next day. As they scribbled down notes, a question danced on their mind. Was the neighborhood ready to face the truths hidden behind the Smith store? Would they stand united, or would the ghosts of their past grievances resurface to tear them apart once more? Join in for the next chapter, where the truth unfolds and secrets are laid bare. What do you think will happen when they confront the Smiths? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more neighborhood tales. As the group prepared to confront the Smith house the next day, a palpable tension hung in the air. The sun rose reluctantly, casting a faint light over Maplewood, as if it too was apprehensive about the confrontation. The narrator gathered the neighbors outside their own home, the morning mist still clinging to the ground. They glanced at each face, searching for resolve amidst the uncertainty. "All right, everyone," the narrator started, their voice steady yet laced with adrenaline. "We're here to make sure our kids are safe. Let's remember that our intentions are good." A nod of agreement rippled through the crowd, Even Mark, who had been the most hesitant, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. "Remember, we're not here to accuse," Sarah added, her voice softer yet firm. "We're concerned neighbors, and we need to approach this delicately." As they walked toward the Smith house, the mood shifted from cautious hope to creeping dread. The once vibrant laughter of the children that filled the air now seemed like a distant echo. Jenna, walking hand in hand with Timmy, whispered, "What if they're in there and they really are doing something bad?" "Then we'll find out," Timmy replied, his small face set with determination. The narrator marveled at the innocence of the children, wishing fiercely to protect that spark of hope and courage. They reached the overgrown yard of the Smith house, where wild shrubs and unkempt grass seemed to symbolize the neglect enveloping the property. The windows, dusty and grimy, concealed whatever secrets lay within. The group gathered at the door, a mix of apprehension and resolve filling the air. "On three," the narrator instructed, their heart racing. 1, 2, 3. They knocked firmly, the sound echoing ominously against the wooden door. Seconds stretched into eternity, each tick of the clock resonating like a drumbeat in their ears. A shuffle sounded from inside, and the door creaked open, revealing a figure shrouded in shadow. "What do you want?" a gruff voice demanded, sending shivers down the narrator's spine. It was Mr.
Smith, the patriarch of the family. "Mr. Smith," the narrator started, their voice unexpectedly steady. "We're neighbors from down the street. We've noticed some things that concern us about the safety of our kids." "Concerned?" Mr. Smith scoffed. "You're just here to meddle in my business." His gaze was sharp, a defensive barrier shielding his vulnerability. "Not at all," the narrator pressed, choosing their words carefully. "We just want to make sure everything is all right. We've heard rumors about why you left so suddenly." The man's face hardened, but there was a flicker of something deeper. Pain? Regret? The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, feeling the weight of the confrontation. "Rumors?" he spat, his voice rising. "People love to gossip. You think you know my family's story?" "We want to understand," Sarah interjected, her tone soft yet firm, "because it affects all of us, especially our children. If there's something wrong, we want to help." With each word, the tension thickened, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. Mr. Smith's facade began to crack, revealing a glimpse of the man behind the anger. "Help?" he laughed bitterly. "You think you can help me? You have no idea what we've been through. We lost everything." The air hung heavy with unspoken truths, and the neighbors shifted uneasily. "What do you mean?" the narrator asked, their voice barely above a whisper, sensing the vulnerability beneath his anger.
Smith admitted, his voice faltering. "And my daughter, she got into trouble. We were trying to keep it together, but the weight of it all crushed us. We didn't leave because we wanted to. We were forced." The neighbors gasped collectively, their hearts softening as the story unfolded. Jenna looked up at Timmy, her innocent eyes reflecting the pain of understanding. "We didn't want to put our kids in danger," Mr. Smith continued, his voice cracking. "We thought isolating ourselves would protect them, but it only made things worse. Seeing your children play outside, it reminds me of everything we lost." The initial anger dissipated, replaced by a profound sense of empathy. The narrator took a step closer, realizing the man before them was a victim of his circumstances, not a villain. "Mr. Smith," the narrator said gently, "we're sorry for what you've gone through. We didn't come to judge. We came because we care about our community. We want to support each other, not tear each other apart." Silence enveloped them as the weight of the truth settled in. Mr. Smith's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving his body. "I didn't want anyone to know," he whispered, the vulnerability in his voice palpable. "I wanted to protect my family." In that moment, the crowd transformed from a group of accusatory neighbors into a community of understanding. They had approached the confrontation as adversaries, but found themselves united in compassion.
"Maybe we can help each other," Sarah suggested, her heart swelling with hope. "We can organize support and figure out a way to lift each other up." Mr. Smith looked at the group, seeing not just neighbors,
but potential allies. His eyes softened, revealing the pain and remorse he had hidden for too long. "I'd like that," he replied, his voice steadier now. "I really would." As they began to talk, sharing stories of hardship and support, the atmosphere shifted entirely. The children, sensing the change, began to play again, laughter echoing through the yard, a stark contrast to the heaviness that had filled the air moments before. The narrator felt a wave of relief wash over them. The confrontation had transformed into something greater, an opportunity for healing and connection. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over Maplewood, the narrator turned to the crowd, their heart full. "Let's keep this conversation going. We're not just neighbors, we're a community. Let's protect our children together." The crowd erupted in agreement, a sense of unity blossoming where division once thrived. As they dispersed, hopeful discussions floated in the air, promising new beginnings for everyone involved. Before they parted, the narrator turned to the audience, a smile creeping onto their face. "What do you think? Can communities really come together in times of trouble? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter."
And with that, the narrator felt the warmth of connection wrap around them like a comforting embrace, knowing that sometimes the hardest truths lead to the most beautiful resolutions. As the door swung open wider, the neighbors caught a glimpse of the disarray inside the Smith home. Piles of unwashed dishes towered in the sink, and the air was thick with a mix of stale food and something more unsettling, a sense of despair that hung like a heavy fog. Mr. Smith's eyes darted nervously, and the shadows of his home seemed to loom larger than life, swallowing him whole. "Look, we get it," the narrator said, stepping forward, trying to bridge the chasm of misunderstanding. "We all have our struggles, but we can't ignore what's happening here. It's affecting the kids." The words felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, hoping to pull Mr. Smith back from the edge. "You think I'm a monster," Mr. Smith's voice cracked, revealing the vulnerability beneath his anger. "You think I'm the only one who's lost everything? You don't know my story." The neighbors shifted uncomfortably, the reality of his pain sinking in. "But we want to understand," Sarah urged, her voice a soothing balm. "We want to help. We're here because we care." The group held their breath, waiting for a response. In that moment, the facade that had long shielded Mr. Smith began to crumble. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper.
"I thought I could protect my kids by keeping them away from all this." He gestured vaguely inside his home, as if the very walls held his failures captive. "But I see now that I was wrong." "What do you mean?" the narrator pressed, sensing a breakthrough. "My daughter. She got involved with the wrong crowd," Mr. Smith continued, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought isolating her would help, but it only made things worse. I lost my job trying to keep us afloat, and when we disappeared, it wasn't just to run away. We were hiding." Gasps escaped from the neighbors, the weight of his confession settling heavily over them. "But we saw the kids playing in the yard," Jenna piped up, her innocence shining through the darkness of the situation. "They seemed happy." "They were," Mr. Smith said, a flicker of pride mixed with pain crossing his face. "But I was scared. Scared of what might happen if they got too close to the truth. I thought I could shield them from my failures, but in doing so, I put them at risk." A silence enveloped the group, the reality of their assumptions crashing down around them. "What can we do?" the narrator asked, their heart racing. "We want to support you and your family, but we need to know how." "Help me bring my daughter back," Mr. Smith pleaded, his voice breaking. "If you truly care, help me pull her from the edge before it's too late."
In that moment, the neighbors exchanged resolute glances, a shared understanding forming between them. "We'll start a community watch," Sarah suggested, her voice steady. "We'll create a safe space for the kids, activities, support groups, anything to help bring families like yours back together." The narrator nodded, feeling a surge of hope. Let's organize a neighborhood event, they proposed. A barbecue, a game day, something that invites everyone. We can share our stories, our struggles, and build a network of support. We can't let fear drive us apart. As the neighbors rallied around this new plan, Mr. Smith's expression softened. "You'd really do that for us?" he asked, disbelief coloring his voice. "Absolutely," the narrator affirmed. "We're all in this together. It's time to break down the walls." With a newfound determination, the group began to outline their plans. They would transform the park into a vibrant hub of activity where laughter could once again echo through the neighborhood. They envisioned soccer games, art classes, and community dinners that would weave their lives together, fostering understanding and compassion among families. Days turned into weeks as the event approached, and the excitement in the air was palpable. The neighbors worked tirelessly, creating banners, planning games, and preparing food. Mr. Smith, alongside his children, became an integral part of the preparations, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been fractured.
On the day of the event, the sun shone brightly over Maplewood, illuminating the smiles of children as they played in the park. Laughter filled the air, a sweet symphony of joy that drowned out the ghosts of fear and suspicion. The community had come together, united by a shared purpose, to protect their children and support one another. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, the narrator stood back, taking in the scene. They felt a swell of pride in their chest, realizing that this was the power of community. It wasn't just about confronting fears. It was about fostering connections, understanding one another's struggles, and standing together in the face of adversity. "Hey," Timmy called out, running up to the narrator with a soccer ball in hand. "Can you play with me?" The narrator smiled, feeling the weight of the world lift from their shoulders. "Of course, buddy." As they joined the game, they couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The Smith family, once shrouded in mystery and fear, was now embraced by the community, and the laughter of children echoed through Maplewood once more. And as the narrator looked around, they knew they had to ask, what about your community? What steps have you taken to support each other? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of resilience and unity.